Number 8. Yvonne Sidarenko. Yvonne Sidarenko was a talented artist who discovered that he also had a knack for sharpshooting after joining the Red Army. While fighting in the Battle of Moscow, he became a self-taught sniper. During his time off, when he wasn't required to fight, he went off on his own and practiced killing German soldiers from afar. Impressed by the young man's skills, Red Army commanders had him teach other soldiers who displayed the potential to become expert snipers. He taught them from a scholarly standpoint, educating them on theory and other aspects of sniper shooting, and also took them out to practice, often working with recruits individually to hone their skills. Sidarenko and his group of trainees were known among the Germans, who sent their own snipers in to counter the threat posed by the Russian sharpshooters. But the Nazi snipers were no match for the Soviet marksmen. Sidarenko racked up 500 confirmed kills throughout the war, and one of his most significant accomplishments came when he interrupted the German supply line by blowing up a tanker truck and 3 tractors. His participation in combat decreased after his supervisors realized how he could strengthen the war effort by passing his skill on to others. Sidarenko trained over 250 snipers, including some who went off to make record kills. Sidarenko was also banned from fighting during the war's later stages because he was considered too valuable to lose. After the war, Sidarenko returned to normal civilian life, working as the foreman of a coal mine until his retirement. Then, on February 19, 1994, Sidarenko passed away at 74. Number 7. Robert de la Rochefoucauld. Count Robert Jean-Marie de la Rochefoucauld descended from French nobility, but his family's high social standing didn't mean anything to the invading Nazis, who took his father prisoner. He supported Charles de Gaulle's Free France movement and soon learned that the Nazis had blacklisted him. In 1942, at the age of 19, La Rochefoucauld took an alias and fled France with plans to join de Gaulle's forces in England. He was taken prisoner in Spain, but pretended he was British and was released to the embassy. Impressed with the young man's quick thinking and cunning displays of intelligence, the British offered La Rochefoucauld a job with the covert Special Operations Executive Group. He accepted, and in 1943, he parachuted into Nazi-occupied France and blew up some railroad tracks. The Germans captured him, but he managed to escape by jumping out of a truck, running for his life, and stealing an unattended limousine from a Nazi driver. La Rochefoucauld was captured by the Germans yet again during a sabotage mission in 1944. He faked a seizure in his jail cell to get the guard to enter, then beat him with a table leg and hightailed it out of there. Using his connections to the underground resistance, he borrowed a nun's habit and walked to safety right under the Nazis' noses. Amazingly, La Rochefoucauld survived the war. He then returned to his village, Uzois-sur-Trézy, where he went on to serve as the mayor for 30 years. But in 2012, at the ripe old age of 88, he passed away. Number 6. Otto Scorsani. Standing at 6 feet 4 inches tall and sporting a permanent scar from being slashed across the face with a sword during his youth, Nazi commando Otto Scorsani was intimidating based on his appearance alone. He joined the Waffen-SS during the early stages of the war and went on to become Hitler's personal bodyguard. Scorsani led and participated in a handful of high-stakes operations, including the liberation of Italian dictator Benito Mussolini from an alpine ski resort where he was being held prisoner in 1943. In a mission codenamed Operation Aisha, also known as the Gran Sasso Raid, Scorsani and 16 other SS officers quietly descended on the property and ambushed the guards with ease. The raid took less than 10 minutes from start to finish, and not a single shot was fired. In 1944, Scorsani led the kidnapping of Miklos Horthy Jr., the son of a Hungarian regent who'd begun secretly negotiating with the Russian Red Army. Known as Operation Panzerfaust, the abduction plot was a success. Horthy was taken to Dachau, where he remained until U.S. forces liberated the camp in May of 1945. While being held at a prisoner of war camp after World War II, Scorsani escaped from custody. He went on to live in Spain, then Egypt, where he worked as a military advisor. In an odd twist, he ended up working for the Israeli intelligence agency called Mossad. At some point, he returned to Spain and founded a neo-Nazi group called Sadade. Scorsani also allegedly headed a large-scale effort to help Nazi war criminals flee to Spain, Argentina, and other countries. During his time away from Germany, he was declared denazified in absentia, restoring his ability to freely travel throughout Europe. He died from lung cancer in 1975 at the age of 67. Number 5. Oskar de la Vanger. Considering the atrocities committed by the Nazis, it took a lot for a high-ranking official to stand out against others for the level of depravity they displayed. Oskar de la Vanger was among the handful of men to make that distinction after becoming the leader of his own unit called the de la Vanger Brigade. Consisting mainly of prisoners who weren't expected to survive their service, the unit massacred civilians on a level that somehow raised eyebrows among some of the cruelest factions of the SS. De la Vanger routinely extorted people in the ghetto of Lublin for ransoms, injected female prisoners with strychnine poison, and carried out other torturous and sadistic murders. One rumor claimed that he had bars of soap made from human fat. Some of de la Vanger's most appalling crimes against humanity were committed during the Wola massacre, which saw between 40,000 and 50,000 Polish civilians murdered at the hands of the Nazis. After receiving complaints about de la Vanger's behavior, the SS launched an investigation. He was relocated to Belarus, but managed to avoid any serious disciplinary measures and continued his campaign of deranged violence. In June of 1945, roughly 3 weeks after the Germans surrendered, de la Vanger was caught hiding out in civilian clothing at a remote hunting lodge in French-occupied territory. He was taken to a prison camp at Althausen, where he died a few days later. There were conflicting stories surrounding the nature of his death and where his body ended up, so it's not exactly clear what led to his well-deserved demise. Number 4. Ludmila Pavlochenko. Nicknamed Lady Death by her enemies, Ludmila Pavlochenko grew up in Ukraine, and as a teenager, she took sharpshooting lessons. During college, she took classes at a sniper school in Kiev. When the Nazis invaded the Soviet Union in 1941 with the launch of Operation Barbarossa, the 24-year-old immediately enlisted in the Allied war effort. Recruiters tried to talk her into becoming a nurse, but she insisted on joining the infantry. All those shooting lessons Pavlochenko took paid off, earning her a place in the Red Army's 25th Rifle Division as a sniper. She fought in the siege of Odessa, accumulating 187 confirmed kills, then went on to fight in the siege of Sevastopol, where she brought her kill count up to 257. Pavlochenko's missions became increasingly dangerous as she earned one promotion after another for her master marksmanship. Using a loudspeaker, the Germans tried bribing her repeatedly to abandon the Red Army, promising her plenty of chocolate and a position as an officer. When Pavlochenko refused to budge, the promises became threats. After being injured by shrapnel from a mortar shell in 1942, she evacuated to Moscow, where she spent time healing from her injuries and taught other sniper recruits. By then, Pavlochenko had recorded 309 confirmed kills under her belt, making her the most successful female sniper in history. She never returned to combat. Instead, she traveled to Washington, D.C. late in 1942, becoming the first Soviet citizen to be welcomed into the White House. While there, Pavlochenko campaigned for American support for a second front in Europe to help the ailing Red Army. She embarked on a speaking tour across the U.S. to discuss her combat experience and was sadly met with a lot of judgment for trivial things, like not wearing enough makeup or not having a feminine enough appearance. But history would eventually recognize her for the right reasons and acknowledge her accomplishments, including in the form of 2 commemorative Soviet postage stamps that were issued in her honor, one in 1943 and another after her death from a stroke in 1974 at the age of 58. Do you have any war heroes in your family? Tell us about them in the comments. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button. Number 3. Maria Mondo. After Germany annexed Austria in 1938, Austrian-born Maria Mondo became a staff member at the Lichtenberg concentration camp, where she worked alongside 50 other women as an Aufseherin, or female bodyguard. From there, she was transferred to the all-women Ravensbrück camp outside Berlin, where she met the Nazi standards for a model employee and received a promotion. During the rest of her time at Ravensbrück, Mondo was in charge of other guards and oversaw beatings, floggings, and other punishments. In 1942, Mondo was assigned to Auschwitz II-Birkenau, where she was promoted to the rank of Lagerführerin, the top boss of the female camp. She ruled over both employees and prisoners in a particularly brutal manner, earning herself the nickname of the Beast. According to rumors, some prisoners were taken away and were never heard from again simply for making eye contact with Mondo. She beat, whipped, and kicked inmates for no reason other than asserting her dominance and the sadistic enjoyment she got from making people suffer. On at least one occasion, Mondo crammed around 700 naked prisoners into Block 25, otherwise infamously known as the Block of Death. She kept them there for a week without food or water. Many, if not most of the women, died before those who were still alive were taken to the gas chamber. Mondo sent an estimated 500,000 prisoners to their deaths before the war's end. She fled back to her home region, where her father refused to help hide her and was instead arrested by the U.S. Army. The disgraced former guard spent the next 2 years locked up at Dachau before going before a tribunal for alleged war crimes in 1947. She was found guilty, and as a result, Mondo was hanged the following year. Number 2. Audie Murphy. Like many young men, Audie Murphy lied about his age to join the United States military after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941. Abandoned by his father and having lost his mother at a young age, he was a loner and dropout who grew up in abject poverty and had always dreamed of being a soldier. The Army, Navy, and Marine Corps all initially turned Murphy down for being underweight. However, he eventually managed to get accepted into the Army and quickly proved himself as a highly skilled marksman. From early 1943 to mid-1944, Murphy served in the Mediterranean theater, where he routinely put his life on the line to protect his fellow soldiers. He fought relentlessly against Nazi ambushes and attacks, refusing to back down even in cases where it seemed like the odds were impossibly stacked against him. Murphy also fought through illnesses and injuries, never leaving the battlefield until he felt his work was done or until his superiors ordered him to. When the Germans killed Murphy's best friend in southern France during the summer of 1944, he fearlessly advanced on them alone while under direct fire, killing 6, wounding 2, and taking 11 prisoner. It wasn't the first or only time he took on an entire group of enemy soldiers alone either. On another occasion, he took out a sniper who'd shot him in the hip. After seeing the Germans set a tank destroyer on fire in France's Colmar pocket, Murphy mounted the burning weapon and fired its .50 caliber machine gun for an hour before running out of ammunition. These are just some of the examples of the action that made him one of the most decorated World War II soldiers. He received every U.S. military combat award for valor, including the Medal of Honor, along with 5 French medals and 1 Belgian award. Sadly, like many veterans, Murphy suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder at a time when not much was known about it. Back then, the condition was written off as something that returning soldiers would eventually get over. In the years leading up to his death in 1971, he became a vocal advocate for military members and veterans who struggled to come to grips with the trauma of war. Number 1. Jenny Russo. After the Nazis occupied France, German military members in Paris became especially fond of a beautiful 21-year-old woman they knew as Madeleine Chauffeur, who spoke perfect German. Her day job consisted of working as a translator who helped negotiate contracts between French businessmen and German occupiers. But the young woman, whose real name was Jenny Russo, had an ulterior agenda. She was working as a spy against the Nazis and passing information onto a French resistance intelligence network known as the Druids. Russo used her feminine wiles to coax information about secret weapons projects from the Germans. One of her tried and true strategies involved pretending she didn't believe rumors about the V-1 and V-2 rockets that were being developed, which made the men she spoke with feel compelled to convince her that the weapons were real. Allied intelligence officials were wowed by the amount of information she gathered, which included the name of the German officer in charge of the rocket program, the location of a testing plant, the locations of planned launches, and details about the production process. Some of the intelligence that Russo passed on helped the Allies in major ways, including by enabling them to disrupt the rocket programs. Throughout the war, she was captured twice and imprisoned at 3 concentration camps. She was rescued toward the end of the war, however, and went on to marry, have kids, and work as a freelance interpreter. At the old age of 98, Russo passed away in 2017 after living a full and exciting life. In your opinion, who was the most lethal individual from World War II? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!